Ready?
Yeah, just tell me.
Okay, ready, guys?
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Relationship Foods. I am so excited because I have my very special guests, Hannah and Ethan, here with us today. And they requested mac and cheese. And so I'm gonna make mac and cheese and we're gonna jump right into it. And so before I start, I wanna say that I have mac and cheese for different occasions. There is the baked mac and cheese, the classic soul food mac and cheese. There's the mac and cheese with, with seafood. There's the mac and cheese that, you would add buffalo chicken to. There's various variations of mac and cheese that you can have. But today we're gonna do a classic baked mac and cheese, my classic baked mac and cheese. The only exception is that we're adding a few special cheeses. We are adding Vermont sharp white cheddar, and we are adding Gruyere, which is a very fancy form of Swiss. So we're gonna jump right in. The first thing you need to do for this mac and cheese is you need to have butter. So this is just salted butter. We have our pan heating. And so you're gonna add the butter, and you wanna melt that butter because we're making a roux. And a roux is just a fancy French term for a mixture of flour and butter. And what this does is this allows the mac and cheese sauce to get thick. So everyone has a different way to make mac and cheese. Some people, they add the milk and the cheese separately, but I believe that when you make a roux, you get a really nice, thick, creamy, integrated sauce that has the cheese melted throughout it versus the cheese like in some parts and then a glob over here. I think a cheese sauce is what really allows you to get that creamy cheesiness throughout the entire thing. So our butter is melting and then we're gonna add some flour. And for this, you kind of just have to eyeball it. So I'm just gonna take a spoon here as this butter is melting and I'm gonna add it. And what you're looking for is you're looking for a thick paste. And the key is you wanna make sure that you cook the flour out. Like you don't wanna just add the flour and then start going adding the half and half in the milk. You wanna make sure that the flour is given a chance to cook for a little while, because otherwise you'll have a little floury taste in your mac and cheese and no one wants that, especially not the kids. So I'm gonna add some flour as this butter is melting. And the best way to do it is just to start whisking it after you add a little bit to get a feel for it. There's no other way that you can know. So I'm gonna get my whisk here and I'm just gonna start whisking it to see. And people think that roux are this very intimidating thing because the name sounds hard, but it's literally just flour and butter. It doesn't take that much work, that much time. And so as you can see, it's starting to get a little thick. And so I'm just gonna keep stirring it here and let that cook out. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more flour actually, because you want it to be a thick paste. That's what allows you to make sure that the sauce gets thick. And flour is the key. You can't just have the butter, you have to have the flour. So I'm gonna mix a little bit more. And you can see it starting to get thick. That's exactly what you're looking for. This is a roux. So I'm just gonna cook this for a little bit. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start adding the half and half, and I'm gonna start adding the milk. And half is basically just half cream, half milk, and milk is just milk. I like the combination of the two. You can use all milk if you want, or you can use just milk and heavy cream if you would like to. But this recipe is in some ways inspired by my mom's mac and cheese recipe, and she always uses half and half of milk. So if it works for my mom, it works for me. So I'm gonna cook this roux a little bit more, because you wanna make sure like I said, all the flour is cooked out. You don't want any issues. Because the last thing you want is someone taste the mac and cheese and say, oh, this tastes kind of like flour. No one wants that. And so I'm gonna turn this down a little bit because you wanna cook the roux out. And roux is something that you use for, if you're making gumbo. Like roux is a very classic thing for that. And what you would do is you would actually cook this roux until it gets like a dark brown color, and that's what you use as a base for a good gumbo. So roux has many different applications. It's originally a French term, but it's used for all sorts of things. When I make my biscuits and gravies, I make a roux. And so this looks good. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start adding the half and half. And what's important is you don't add it all at the same time. You wanna make sure that you give it a chance to incorporate, because you don't want any lumps. You don't want a lumpy sauce. You want a nice integrated sauce. And so I'm adding a little bit, mixing it. Adding a little bit more, then mixing it again. And you're just gonna keep doing this and doing this until all of it is integrated. And the thing is, you may not know how much sauce you need, how much milk you need rather, until the sauce is all done. Because you may start adding the cheese and realize it's a little bit thick, and in that case you can just add a little bit more, half and half. But I'm just gonna add the amount I have here, and then we can see later if we need to add more. And then after you've added that, I'm gonna add some milk. I'm not gonna add all of this just yet because we're making sauce for the kids and so we don't need too much of the milk just yet. And so I'm gonna leave it like this, and I'm gonna save this little bit in case it needs some more. And so now that you have this, what we're gonna do is before it gets hot, what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna move it off of the heat, and I'm gonna take this egg that I've beaten. And some people say, why would you put eggs in mac and cheese? It doesn't need eggs. But for me, the eggs provide like a creaminess to it. And so I'm gonna add some eggs to it. And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna whisk this. Now I'm gonna take this spoon and I'm gonna try and temper it. Even though the milk mixture is not as hot as it could be, I wanna make sure that I don't add the eggs and they curdle, because no one wants scrambled eggs in their mac and cheese. And so what you're gonna do to temper your eggs is basically, you're gonna start whisking it and you're gonna add a little bit of the sauce. And what that does is it raises the temperature of the eggs, and it allows you to make sure that when you do add the eggs to the sauce, the temperature doesn't shock it and make the eggs start scrambling. Because again, no one wants mac and cheese with the side of scrambled eggs. We just want mac and cheese. And so I'm gonna keep adding a little bit more, and I'm just gonna keep whisking it. And it's kind of, you gotta have to be, ambidextrous with it. I think that's the word with it. You gotta stir with one hand and whisk with the other. So this looks good, and so I'm gonna add this back. And the reason why I took it off of the heat is because milk can burn very easily, and you don't want that to happen. And so I take it off of the heat while I'm doing this so that doesn't happen. And so we're gonna add it back, and we're gonna keep stirring it. And so now it's almost like a waiting game. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna add one of the secret ingredients that I learned from my mom, and that is the cheddar cheese soup. That is like the thing that makes this mac and cheese distinctive. And you get it at the grocery store and it just comes in a can. And so I'm not gonna add all of this. If I was making a big batch, I would add all of this, but I'm just gonna add some of it. And when we start adding the cheeses and the seasonings, we can taste it. And if we feel like, oh, it needs a little bit more, then we can start adding a little bit more. But for start, we don't need that much. We're just gonna get enough to get that integrated. And you just wanna stir that. And now it really is a waiting game. I'm gonna turn the heat up, and you wanna bring it kind of up. You don't want to boil it, but you want to bring the heat up so it can start simmering. And that's how it gets thick, because you don't want to add the cheese right now, because if you added the cheese right now, the cheese would just melt, but it would be kind of like this grainy texture. And if you ever had a mac and cheese where the sauce tastes kind of grainy, that's what probably happened. They didn't give it the sauce enough time to get thick, so that the way that it gets thick is the roux gets in there and it starts simmering together, and the roux makes it thick, and then that gives the sauce something to cling to, so it's not grainy. So we're just gonna keep stirring this. And this is not the thing where you just, set this down and then you go watch TV or start doing stuff around the house. This is the type of thing where you kind of have to be here and you have to stir it, because you don't want the milk to burn, you don't want the mixture to stick, you just want it to get nice and thick. And some people add their seasonings right now, but what I do is I let it get thick first and then I add my seasonings. I just feel like I let this hang out, and you know what? I'm actually gonna add a little bit more of the cheddar cheese soup, because I can already tell that I could use a little bit more of this stuff. So I'm gonna add a little bit more. And mac and cheese, to me, I have to say, is one of the things that is most daunting, to me at least. Like, when you're cooking soul food, one of the first things you have to master is mac and cheese. And it takes people years to master it. And at Thanksgiving, you can't have anybody making mac and cheese. It has to be someone who knows what they're doing, because it takes years of practice. I feel like I've been cooking mac and cheese for maybe the past 4 or 5 years, and I still have to do trial and error and see what works. And I'm always trying different cheeses, trying to find that perfect recipe. I don't think no two versions of my mac and cheese are ever exactly the same, because it's really a thing where you're kind of feeling it out. You're like, sometimes it may need more of this cheese, other times you maybe taste it and it needs a little bit more of that. But the key is you have to be willing to try it. You have to taste it. That's the key to almost anything in cooking. You can't be a good cook if you don't taste your food. But especially with mac and cheese, because you don't want bland mac and cheese. And we have lots of seasonings that we're gonna add. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. But I'm just gonna let this do its thing and keep stirring it. And then I'm gonna show you how we flavor it and get it ready for the pasta and mix it all together. So our sauce is all thickened, ready to go. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna turn the heat completely off. And what that's gonna allow us to do is that's gonna give us space to start adding our seasoning to it. But you can see it's nice and thick right here. and good. And so I'm gonna start adding the cheeses. And so what we have here is I have a regular, just sharp cheddar. And what I did is I shredded this myself. I bought the blocks of cheese and shredded it. And for the longest time, I used pre-shredded cheeses. But I found that when you shred it yourself, it just helps with the creaminess and the melt factor of the entire sauce. And they also coat the pre-shredded cheese with like this wax or something to make it not stick together. And we don't want that in the sauce. And so if you have time, I would shred it yourself. You can use a food processor, get a cheese shredder, but it's really worth the wait. And I can already see that this sauce is gonna be a little bit on the thicker side even before I add the cheese. And so I'm just gonna add a little bit more milk to it. But we're all ready to start adding the cheese. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of the regular sharp. And you just wanna add a little at a time and give each bit of cheese a little bit of a chance to get all nice and melted into the sauce. And you can use really any cheeses that you want. The cheeses is where that's where your personality comes in. If there's somebody who likes, a spicy mac and cheese, you could do like a pepper jack. But if and if I was making this like a lobster mac and cheese, I would do the Gruyere and I would maybe do some Parmesan. Like depending on what you're making the mac and cheese for, who you're making it for, you can really mix and match up your cheeses accordingly. So I'm gonna add some Colby Jack as well to this, and I'm not gonna use all of this cheese. This would be a lot of cheese, but you always wanna have enough cheese on deck. You'd rather have more cheese than too little cheese, because what is mac and cheese without the cheese? It's just mac, and no one really wants that. We want the cheese. You're here for the cheese. And honestly, for me, mac and cheese is one of the dishes that I love to make most. And I don't know if it's because it's one of the first dishes that I feel like I really started perfecting, or because it reminds me of home. I'm not really sure, but it's just something about making mac and cheese that I always enjoy. So now I'm going to add some of the Gruyere, which is just fancy Swiss, but it gives it a really nice, it almost has like a nutty, it has a slight bitterness, but like it kind of almost like a nuttiness. And it's like if Swiss cheese and Parmesan had a child or a love child, I would describe that as Gruyere. Maybe that's maybe other people would disagree with me, but that's what I think. And then I'm gonna add some of the Vermont white cheddar, which is also sharp. And you could use, sometimes I also do mild cheddar, but in this case, I'm using all sharp cheddar. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna season it. This is getting thick already, so I'm gonna add more of the milk. And that's really what it is. Like I said, you kind of have to feel it. Like no two mac and cheeses may be the same that you make, because you kind of have to feel it out and see like, okay, what makes sense for me to add to this one? What makes sense for you to add to this one? So you really just have to be attentive. And so now that this is nice and thick, you can start adding our seasoning. And I'm gonna taste it, and we may add more cheese. So don't think that's it for the cheese. I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar. And this is another secret ingredient. Because cheese has this natural bitterness in some cases, especially since we're using sharp cheeses, the sugar kind of balances it out. And you're not doing a lot, like it doesn't make it sweet, but like just like you add salt to baked goods to bring out the flavors of the sweet flavors of your baked goods, you do the same, I think, for savory dishes with sugar. Anytime you have something that's too acidic or too salty, sometimes that sugar will like balance it out and just like really help all the flavors mix together. So I'm adding some of that, and then I'm gonna see what I have over here. I'm gonna add a little Worcestershire sauce. I don't know how to pronounce it. Worcestershire, I don't know how people pronounce it. I'm gonna just add a couple of dashes of that. I don't always do that, but in this case, I'm feeling adventurous, so we're just gonna add a little bit of it. I'm gonna add some hot sauce. Hot sauce, there's no explanation needed for why you should add hot sauce. Hot sauce just makes everything taste better. There's a little bit of something that got in here. Let me get this out real quick. And so I'm gonna add the hot sauce. What else do I have here? Oh, some nutmeg. Now, in a traditional, you may think of nutmeg, what are you doing? But in a traditional bechamel sauce, which is basically what this base is, the flour, the butter, the milk, that's a bechamel sauce, which is a fancy term for like a French white sauce. And in that sauce, traditionally, there is nutmeg. And you may think like, why would you ever add nutmeg to mac and cheese? But it adds something. And I don't know what, it just gives it a nice flavor. So don't go crazy with it. Like, this is not nutmeg mac and cheese. I remember there was one time I was making mac and cheese with a friend, and he called for like 2 tablespoons of nutmeg or something. And when we were smelling the mac and cheese bacon, it was like, this smells like nutmeg. You don't want that. So I added some nutmeg. I'm gonna add some ground cayenne pepper. Not too much, because the kids don't wanna make it too spicy for them. And like, if you really like spice, you can add more, but it's just enough to flavor it. And then this is, like I said, this is where your mac and cheese is really made. It's where how you season it, because you don't want it to be bland. And I'm gonna add some ground mustard, another secret of my mom. And that also helps the flavor. Some people add actual wet mustard, like ground Dijon mustard, but I just go with the ground kind because I think that just gives it enough flavor without having to, have the Dijon flavor of like wet mustard or something like that. And then of course, gonna add some black pepper to it. And obviously we're gonna taste all of this. So this is not the last you're gonna see of these seasonings, but I just wanna get an initial round of seasonings done so I can taste it and we can see what it needs and then we can adjust accordingly. And that's really what people think, like, how do I become a great cook? What do I do? And the key really is trial and error. I can't tell you how many things I've tried and my family's tried and they're like, what were you doing when you made this? It wasn't good. But like it's all about just trial and error. I'm gonna add some salt now. And salt is important. You don't want it to be underseasoned. I also, to the macaroni rather, that I boiled, make sure you salt your water. That's what I did, because that's really the only time you have to season the actual pasta. Like, you can season the sauce, but if you don't season your salt when you're boiling pasta, you lose the chance to season the pasta itself, and that's something that you want, because you don't want to have a flavorful sauce and then bland pasta. Like, everything has to be seasoned. We don't do no seasoning around here. We're gonna make sure it's seasoned. And I'm actually gonna add, in addition to that salt, I'm gonna add a little bit of seasoned salt. Not a lot, just a little bit. Because you just wanna make sure it's nice and flavored. And then we're gonna taste this and we're gonna see what else it may need, because it's never done the first time around. That's what I found. And so I'm just gonna get my spoon here, but it's looking nice and thick and it's looking good. I'm gonna steal another spoon here, running out of spoons. And I'm gonna try it and see what else it needs. Okay, we're getting there. That's not bad. I'm gonna add some more cheddar cheese soup to it, just to give it a more cheddarness. And then I'm gonna add some more black pepper to that. And this probably could be the longest part of the process, because you really wanna make sure like it's just right. You don't want it to be under-seasoned. You don't want it to be over-seasoned. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna adjust the seasoning a little bit, and then we're gonna come back and I'm gonna show you how to bring it all together. So I've added all of my seasonings. I think we're all set here to go. I'm just gonna taste it one last time, just to make sure. You can never be too sure. I think we're all set to go. Okay, now that we have our sauce, we have to combine them together. Now, some people, what they'll do is they'll just have the dish there and they'll just toss them all together. Or they'll have the macaroni here and they'll just add this sauce to that. But what I think, what you wanna do for mac and cheese, you wanna make sure you have the right ratio. You don't wanna have too many noodles. You don't wanna have too much sauce. You want a perfect balance. And I found the best way to do that is actually add the macaroni to the sauce rather than the sauce to the macaroni. So what I'm gonna do, and that way you can control how much macaroni there is. And so I'm just gonna take this macaroni, which I boiled, and you wanna boil it to al dente, so that's about 7 minutes. You don't wanna overcook it, because this also is gonna cook, even though for today, I'm just gonna melt the cheese in the oven, but when you're making a traditional baked mac and cheese where you're baking it for 20, 30 minutes, you wanna make sure that it's al dente, because you don't wanna overcook your pasta. You don't wanna have mushy mac and cheese, no one wants that. So I'm just gonna add some of the macaroni here, and then we're gonna stir it together. I'm not gonna use a whisk because I don't wanna like break up the macaroni. I just wanna add it. And we're just gonna start with a little bit, and then we can always add more. You know, less is always more at the beginning, because you never know what ratio you'll end up with. So I'm gonna stir this in, and you wanna start seeing how it all mixes together. Oh yes, I'm gonna need way more pasta than this. But that's good to know. I'd rather have it be that way than to have, oh, I put too much pasta and now I don't have enough sauce, because you've already made the sauce. You can't make more sauce. But we can always add more pasta. And I always have pasta left over. I've never been able to master how to cook enough pasta for the right amount of people. I'm always making too much. There's always too much left, and I have not figured it out. So if you figured it out, hats off to you, because I still struggle with that. So we're getting there. It's not quite there yet, but we're getting close. And some people, if you were making kind of like a more, like this is a stovetop mac and cheese to some extent, because I'm not gonna bake it too long for the kids. But if you were baking If you were making a completely stovetop mac and cheese, this is gonna be stovetop. We're gonna put it in here, add some cheese, and put it in the oven for a little bit. But if this was completely stovetop, some people wanna serve it like this. And it's more like a creamy, almost kind of like a fancy version of like Kraft mac and cheese. But we're gonna bake it a little bit, because even though it is more stovetop than it is baked, I can't not bake it a little bit. It's just, wouldn't be right if you don't bake your mac and cheese a little bit. So we're getting there. I'm just gonna add a little bit more of the elbows here. And you know, with mac and cheese, I say like it's not really mac and cheese unless you use macaroni, but you can use other forms of pasta. You can use cavatappi, which is kind of like a corkscrew. You can use penne if you want to. Again, it kind of depends on what vibe you're going for, but you know, I think classic is always best. And so I would go with the classic elbows. And so you can see here, we're starting to get that nice ratio where it's not too creamy, but it's not too thick either. Maybe just a touch more. We're gonna have a lot of pasta. It might feel more than these 4 ramekins. We might have to, you know, bake a small dish, but we can do that. And I might save that, you know, set that aside for myself a little bit later. But you know, we'll keep going with this right here for now. So this is, I would say this is about perfect for the ratio that we're going for. I wouldn't add anything else. So now we're ready to put it in the ramekins. And so I have these little cute little Dutch oven ramekins. They're kind of old and worn, but I feel like that adds to the aesthetic of it all. I got them from my mom. I actually stole them from her. She wasn't using them, so now I'm using them. So you're gonna, once you feel like you got a good ratio, all you have to do is just pour it in. And so I'm gonna turn that, make sure the oven's off, and we're just gonna pour it into each little ramekin. And as you can see, this is a heavy pot, so you want to make sure you work out before you do this, because you want to drop the macaroni. And like I said, this is going to make more than these 4, and so you can just bake another little small dish if you want, if you have it. But this is what we're doing for this. But you know, it's never a problem to have more macaroni. You can always find a use for it, I'm sure. Somebody somewhere close to you wants macaroni, I can show you at all times. And you just want to make sure these are filled pretty much to the top. That's why I put a little dish under it, so that in case it overflows a little, like it's okay to have it overflowing a little bit. You want the cup to runneth over, if you know what I'm saying. You don't want to be stingy with the macaroni. So this looks good. I'm just gonna put a little bit more here. And the final step is the cheese. You can't have macaroni and cheese without cheese on the top. Some people do breadcrumbs. I've seen potato chips. I've seen so many different things. To me, no. Don't put breadcrumbs on my mac and cheese. Don't put potato chips. The only thing I want on top of my mac and cheese is more cheese. And so we're gonna do just that. So I'm just gonna put some of the cheese right here. And you wanna, don't be stingy. This is mac and cheese. It's not, and this is just a leftover mixture of all the cheeses. You can just mix them all together and add it here. It doesn't have to be particular type of cheese, even though you know you may want to do more of the sharp cheddar than the other ones, because it is the most mild of the 3. Like, and plus Gruyere is expensive, let me tell you. That little block that I got, that was like $10 almost. So it's not cheap. So if you want to just, you know, stick some mild cheddar on top or some regular Vermont sharp cheddar, you are able to do that. And so we have the mac and cheese all done. And now the next step is just, we're gonna pop it in the oven just to let it melt. We're not gonna, this is not a, like I said, this is not a fully baked mac and cheese, so we're not gonna do it for 20, 30 minutes, but just until the cheese is melted, it's nice and bubbly, and then I can't wait to take it out and let the kids try it. I know they're gonna be so excited, so I can't wait. So I'm gonna pop this in the oven, and then we'll be right back to see what it looks like and to share it with the kids. Macaroni and cheese is all done. It's out of the oven and it's ready for the kids. I'm just waiting to see when they're gonna arrive. I'm sure they can smell it, so I don't know where they are. They have to be coming soon. But this is all you have to do, and this is how you make your mac and cheese. And again, you can have this, oh, I hear knocking. Is that who I think it is? Who is it? Hello? Look who it is. Look who it is. You guys decided to come. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
You guys excited to try the food?
Yeah.
Come join me. Let the people see you. You know, come let them see you in the camera. There they are. So we're gonna eat. Are you guys ready? Yes. So we're gonna eat. I'm gonna take this jacket off and we're gonna sit down. We're gonna eat mac and cheese and we're gonna talk about food. My very special guests, Hannah and Ethan, are here with us. And are you guys ready to try the mac and cheese?
Yes.
Yes. So let's try it. So you're gonna get your spoon, you're gonna dig in. Hey, Ethan, you wanna try it? So we're gonna try it together. 1, 2, 3. Make sure you get all the cheese.
It's hot.
It's hot. You need help? Let me help you.
It's really so hot.
Blow it. Now try it. That's good. There you, it's too hot? Blow it a little bit more. Blow. Yeah, blow. Now try it. There you go. I think you blew it enough. Try it. Too hot? You want to blow it? Blow it one more time.
I think it's good.
You like it? Is it too hot for you?
Kind of.
Kind of? You want to blow it? Okay, let's try it now. Still too hot? Better? Got it? Bite it. See it. Just try it. Bite time. There you go. Good job. You like it? You like it? You want? So guys, when I told you what food you wanted me to make, you said mac and cheese. Why did you say mac and cheese?
Because we love mac and cheese.
Why do you love mac and cheese? What do you love about it?
Then it's cheesy.
It's cheesy. So when you have mac and cheese, who normally makes it for you?
My mom, but sometimes my mom goes to the store and buys my mom buys those little containers that are filled
With mac and cheese? And you like that? So I'm gonna ask you some questions. You guys are both gonna answer for me, okay? So if you could only, we got napkins. You wanna, there you go. So my first question for you guys is, if you could eat one food only eat one food for the rest of your life, what food would you eat?
macaroni and cheese.
You would eat that every day for the rest of your life?
Yes.
Nothing else?
Yes.
What about you, Ethan? What would you eat if you could only eat one thing?
Because it's really hot.
It's really hot, but what would you eat if you could only eat one thing? There's only one thing you could eat. What would you eat? You don't have anything?
We're watching TV.
You're watching TV? Okay, we can watch TV later. What is your favorite food? What is your favorite food?
It's hot.
Okay, the macaroni and cheese is hot, but I'm asking you, what is your favorite food ever?
And mix it.
You mix it? Okay, so we'll come back to you, and I'm gonna ask you that question again. So, what is your favorite food that your mommy makes?
Rice and sauce.
What is sasquatch?
It's, well,
What's in it that you like?
it's like soap.
Does it have beans in it?
Yes.
And is it rice?
Yeah.
And that's your favorite thing that she makes?
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite thing that your mommy makes, Ethan?
Mom, rice.
Rice. That's your favorite thing. Good job. Okay. What about your dad? What is your favorite thing that your daddy makes?
Well, my dad doesn't really cook.
He doesn't cook? There's nothing that he cooks that you like?
But he does make me grilled cheese sandwiches, but no, he doesn't cook.
He doesn't cook. When you guys think of food, what is the first thing that pops in your head?
Macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese. You really love macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
It's your favorite thing.
Yes.
Ethan, when you think of food, what do you think of?
Ice and cones.
You think of ice cream cones. Okay, mac and cheese and ice cream cones. I think that's a good combination to me. So, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show and talking with me and trying my food. So you guys are gonna have to come back, and next time you guys come back, we'll have to cook something together. Does that sound good? You guys Ethan, you're gonna come back and cook with me?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
What are we gonna cook next time?
I think we're gonna cook rice and sauce.
We're gonna cook rice and salsa. Yes, we're gonna cook that together, all three of us, and we're gonna share it with all of you. But I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Relationship Foods. Thank you to Hannah and Ethan for joining me and trying the food. And I hope you like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on #RelationshipFoods.